Hey guys, welcome back to the Babbling Boots YouTube channel. We babble about boots. In today's video, we're going to be doing an unboxing of a pair of Meermin boots that I just got in this week. These are more of a, I guess you could say, a special pair of boots. They're not typical Meermin boots from years past. These are their new Negon work boot, which is kind of like a complete revamp of how they've done boots from before, and that's on a completely new last too, called the Negon last. Before we get into too many specs about it though, I kind of want to get into the unboxing of it. I have taken it out of the overall like shipping box, but I haven't seen them yet, so I kind of wanted to get a first impression of it with you guys. So let's get into it. Okay, here we are. So here is the first look, my first look at least, of this new Negon boot. And it looks, first impression, it looks very similar to a Viberg service boot with a few notable differences. This is a 360-degree storm weld. It's not stitched down. It's got 3 speed hooks up here, and it's just a little, I guess a little different, but it does have that Viberg aesthetic to it. Let's go ahead and get them both out. Okay, so here are the boots themselves. So I'll get into the specs of the boots while I'm kind of looking over them right now. This boot is a 360-degree storm weld. It has, I believe, an unstructured toe box, or I think they say on their website it's leather toe puff, so I guess it's not technically completely unstructured, but you can see here, I mean, it's basically unstructured. It just has like a leather toe puff in it, which I guess would be, different than typically if you have a structured one, it'd be like Celastic and it'd be very hard in the front and you couldn't really collapse it at all. So this is, for all intents and purposes, unstructured. It is the Caper Green Naked Kudu leather, and I'm being careful saying that because they also have Caper Green Snuff Kudu leather, and I think I tried to look on the Stead website and they didn't really have much of a description of the differences between the two. I think the main difference is that the Snuff has more oils and waxes in it, whereas the Naked Kudu, I guess, is more naked or natural in the fact that it probably just has less oils and waxes in it. But to me, I have a pair of Snuff Kudu boots from Meermin and it looks pretty similar. I'll bring those out in a bit and do kind of a comparison with them. But some more specs on this. It has this Meermin proprietary outsole here, which is like a commando lug outsole, has Meermin branding on it. It does have 3 speed hooks and then 4 regular eyelets for a total of, I guess you would say, 7 eyelets overall. It is, I believe, the inside, I'll take this out first so I can get better in here. Okay, so the inside is fully unlined, at least the shaft is. So it's kind of got this actually very nice suede-ish feeling, which I guess is the rough outside of the Kudu. It's very soft actually, I really like that. I'd like to get a pair of boots in this snuff leather because it's really cool to feel. Anyway, it is, I believe, so as I said, the shaft is unlined, and then the toe box and the vamp, so like this portion, is lined with horsehide leather. Typically you would find things like calfskin leather in lining. I don't know why they use horsehide leather. I don't know if it's just kind of like a marketing thing. I don't know, because horsehide leather sounds fancy. Everyone knows that like horsehide leather is like really popular right now. So maybe it's like a marketing thing. Maybe it actually is better than calfskin. I will break them in and let you know if there is much of a difference. And as far as the internal components of the boot, this is what I think is kind of cool about it. I think in years past, the other versions of Meermin boots have had more man-made synthetic components to it. This boot though, this heel counter is thick veg tan leather. It's not as stiff as something like a Viberg or White's, but it is veg tan leather. Most, well, I don't want to say most, but a lot of other boot companies use like Celastic heel counters. Like Thursday uses Celastic. I think the old Meermins were Celastic. Most boot brands are going to use Celastic unless it's advertised otherwise. My Wolverines that I've reviewed also uses Celastic back here. So this is leather. The insole is fully veg tan leather, so it's like a thick piece of veg tan leather. And then below that you've got the midsole. I guess you have the filler first for being, anatomically correct. You've got the insole, which is veg tan leather. Then you've got the filler. The filler towards the heel, like the back half, is basically a cork filler, like you'd find in a lot of boots. And then the front half is memory foam. So it's kind of like a dual filler here. front half is memory foam filler, back half is cork filler. And I believe the reason they do that is their website advertises this as flex Goodyear welt. And I believe that means that it's more flexible when you're walking. I don't know that it's not easy to bend because of the outsole, but I think it's just more flexible on the feet, which I think is from the incorporation of the memory foam in the toe box. If they used cork there, it might be a little more stiff, and cork has a tendency to kind of break apart over time. So, you know, if you had cork in this part where your toe is bending a lot, it'd probably kind of shift around and not be as stable here. So that's probably why they use memory foam, to make sure it's not, you know, moving around a lot over time. But the back half is cork, which I do like. I'm glad they didn't just do like a completely memory foam filler for the whole thing, because that would have been kind of sad. And then the midsole is also leather, so it's leather insole, cork filler, memory foam filler, then leather midsole, and then obviously the outsole is this commando thing. So overall, it's got a lot of leather and natural components to it, more so than their boots from years past. And I would say it's up there as far as components with higher end companies, you know, Grantstone. I think Grantstone is all leather, so maybe it's like not quite as high as Grantstone because of the memory foam, but you know, memory foam is comfortable for a period of time. So I guess it's just kind of like a personal preference. But this boot costs, for all these leather components, $275, which is like right at the entry of Grantstone boots, especially if you get them on sale. I think most Grantstone boots are like $350-ish now, going up. So I would say this is like pretty close in quality and value to Grantstone, but just for like a cheaper price, which I think is very nice. And I really like the aesthetic. I mean, it's got a very Viberg aesthetic. There's no mistaking the fact that they borrowed heavily from Viberg when they designed this boot, which I don't think is a bad thing. Some people are like, oh my God, you guys just knocked off a Viberg, which I kind of did. I'm not gonna lie, it kind of is a knockoff, but I also like it, you know, for the cheaper price. That's kind of a big draw for it for me. And then I believe, I don't know if I mentioned this yet, I think the tongue is gusseted, which is really cool, because one thing that my Grantstone Tobacco Edward boots are not gusseted, and that kind of bothers me. I really prefer gusseted boots. And they said on the Meermin website, they refer to it as a bellows tongue, which is kind of, I guess, an interesting way. This looks like it's gusseted. So it's gusseted most of the way up, actually. This is maybe like a full gusseted tongue, really. Actually, here we go. 1, 2, 3, that's 7. It is 5/7 gusseted. If we're going by the eyelets, this is a 5/7 gusseted boot, which is really cool, I think. Anytime you can get a gusseted tongue, to me, I think that's pretty cool. As far as, I haven't really talked about like the finishing of the boot yet. Let's look at that. The stitching looks good on the boot, the left boot at least. It looks like there's a little bit of glue from, I guess, where they were doing the welt. It's not that big of a deal because glue can be removed. I don't know if that's gonna stain the leather. I'll just probably get that off later. It's not that big of a deal, really, I don't think. You can see a little bit of the welt here where it was, you know, the joint. That's not too bad, though. I think it's pretty clean overall for that boot. Right boot, same thing. You can see the welt joint here a little bit, but it's nothing egregious. It looks pretty normal to me. There's not like, I don't want to be overly picky, but I also want to be fair since I've judged other boots fairly harshly. It's not like completely clean on the cutting of the storm welt here. You can see where it's kind of dipped a little bit, and then here maybe it's not clean. And there might be a little dye here on this part. Actually, it's probably also glue. So yeah, there's like glue over the dye, which, you know, it's kind of like a finishing thing, I suppose. It's not the most super well finished boot. Like Grantstone's has better finishing, Viberg's has better finishing. But again, this is $275. I'm just kind of like picking off glue of this as I'm holding it. This is $275. So finishing, I guess, is probably where they're cutting corners, which to me is fine, because the components are very high quality. If there's anywhere I would want a boot maker to cut corners on, I think I would have to say is like finishing touches, right? Because to me, a boot's meant to be worn, as long as it's not like really bad. But like a little bit of like frayed stitching or glue or like dye, I don't think is a big deal for me, because I like to wear my boots out and about and break them in and scuff them up. So the more you wear your boots around, the more you scuff them up, the less those finishing touches will matter over time. And eventually your whole boot will just look scuffed up and unique to you. So I think finishing touches, to me, like I said, aren't that big of a deal. So I kind of went into detail about, the interior components, the unlined suede here, the shaft, and then the internal veg tan insoles. I just kind of wanted like a little deep dive into the boot. I've done this before with my Wolverines. I just wanted to kind of do a deep dive in these to kind of poke around and see what they are made of on the inside. So let's take a look. I got this stick here that I'm going to go in there with and check them out. Hey guys, here we are on the inside of the right boot. For orientation, this is the top of the boot towards the camera. This is the fully gusseted tongue here. As you can see, the gusset basically goes all the way to the top of the boot. Where my stick is basically where the boot starts. So it, for all intents and purposes, is a fully gusseted tongue, which I think is a nice touch. It's pretty waterproof all the way up to the top. And then, as we go down into the shaft, this is that flesh side of the Kudu, which I think is very soft, as I mentioned before, and I prefer unlined boots myself. I've never just been a fan of lined boots. I always like the feeling and the look of the flesh side of boots, so I appreciate that they made this unlined. One other cool thing that they did here is they used this leather, which is the same naked Kudu leather from the outside, and they cut it into a little heel pad here for you, which I think is a nice touch because, this is the inside of the boot. It's not really seen that much. It's not the most glamorous part of the boot, but they did take the time to put this nice, thick, I would say, it's hard to tell from the side, but I would say it's a good at least 4 ounces of leather here for your heel pad. I mean, it obviously has the Meermin logo kind of embossed into it, Meermin, Mallorca, Goodyear welted. And you can really see from this, just that really cool, kind of wild looking texture of the Kudu that you really don't find in calf leathers or horsehide. It's just really unique to look at. And then going up this way, we have towards the front of the boot, this is where the lining does start. As I mentioned, the shaft is unlined, but the vamp forward all the way to the toe box, all the way to the end of the boot, is lined with this horsehide leather. And it is advertised as horsehide, and I'm sure it is horsehide, but it's really interesting because this horsehide feels very similar to calf skin. It's actually just as soft and supple, which makes me wonder if, did they use younger horses for this, you would find with a calf, or did they use, just fully grown horses and it's maybe from a softer portion of the horse? I'm not really sure, but it is on par with the softness you'd find from calf skin, so that's pretty cool. And then, as we go more towards the front of the boot here, you can see this leather here. This is the veg tan insole, and it's goes all the way under the heel pad here, and it follows the whole length of the boot, and it's just leather. It's just a solid slab of leather. I'm not going to try to pry this up, but I'd say it's at least 5 ounces of leather there, probably more than that. But between this heel pad here and then the insole towards the front for your heel, that's at least 10 ounces of leather, I would say, that's under your foot just for that part alone. Plus, you have the cork filler and then the midsole as well. So you have a good bit of leather cushioning your foot here. So I think, overall, that's a very nice touch that they did with all these internal components. If there's any criticism for the inside of the boot, I would say, as you can see here, right there, there's some glue here towards the top of the boot, I guess, where they stitched the tongue in. There's glue there. And then you can see down here where the vamp is, I guess, glued. That lining, there's some glue there. And then it looks like there's probably some glue here as well. So, as I mentioned before, fit and finish, maybe not that stellar on these boots because there is just a lot of glue that kind of shows. And this is on the inside of the boot, so it's really not that big of a deal, right? I think that, for $275, the internal components you're getting far outweigh the fact that there's some glue here, at least in my mind. If you're someone that really prefers having the perfect looking boot, especially on the inside, no glue showing, you probably wouldn't care for this, but to me, the internal components and this cool heel pad here far outweigh the little bit of glue. This has been, an overview of the inside of the boot. Let's head back out. Okay, that was pretty cool. I actually really like the touch they did with this Kudu leather heel pad here. I think that's really cool. Hopefully someone out there found this at least either helpful or somewhat interesting. So we'll move on. So one thing I wanted to do is, this isn't a product promo, this is just a mug. It's not advertising anything. One thing I looked online, and the Negon work boots, at least this model, the picture they advertised has some wax cotton laces that are wrapped around the boot. So I went and looked in the box, and it does include this beige orangish pair of wax cotton laces, which is nice. Most Meermin boots that I've had don't, but they did bring these cotton laces in, and I think you can wrap them around the shaft of your boot, which I like to do. I think they're long enough for that, which is nice. And I'll probably end up swapping these round laces out with the flat ones because I just prefer flat laces overall for my boots if I'm wearing cotton ones. If they're leather, obviously leather ones typically aren't flat, but that is a nice touch. So the toe on these is just a standard brogue cap toe. I like cap toe boots. I'm sure if you've ever watched my other videos, pretty much all of the boots I wear are cap toe, and I think broguing is a nice touch. And I'll just do like a demonstration that it is definitely very unstructured in the toe box for these boots. Let me see this right boot. Oh, it is just as soft in the leather. I wish people could feel how soft this suede was. It's like really, really soft. It's crazy. Usually suede, I mean, this is like micro suede. It's not micro suede, it's like suede. It's like above, it's like macro suede. I don't even know. It's just nice feeling. Anyway, we'll move on to, I guess, I'm gonna do a weight comparison of these boots and see how they weigh. Okay. The right boot, 1 pound, 11.5 ounces. The left boot, 1 pound, 11.7 ounces. Okay, I do have a few other ones. So here's my Vibergs that I've weighed a lot, 7.5. 1 pound, 11.2 ounces. Are these Meermins heavier than the Vibergs? 1 pound, 11.5. Wow. Well, this is actually the left boot, So this is 0.5 ounces heavier than the Viberg. Does it feel like that? I guess, yeah, it does. Let's see how they look. So it looks like the Meermin is probably a little bit taller, more pointy. This is kind of cool, as you can see more where the broguing is for both of these boots. It's probably a better way. So the Viberg cap toe comes down a little bit lower than the Meermin. So the Meermin one is slightly bigger or taller. As far as width though, I think it's probably either just as wide or a little narrower in the toe box. It's, I would say probably almost just as wide in the toe box. So it's probably a slightly bigger boot in 7.5 than this Viberg one is. I also have, for comparison, this is the Meermin, I think it's called the jumper boot, which is kind of their older model of cap toe-ish service boots, work boots. This is on the Hawklast, and this is a 7.5 on the Hawklast. This boot is pretty similar, actually. Maybe slightly smaller, shorter, but almost identical. I mean, this is the last that I think it's most comparable to. The Negon last, I think, is the most comparable to something like the Hawklast on the Meermin website, and it's pretty similar. And this boot fits me well, so I think this boot should fit me well as well. And then I also have, for comparison, the Meermin Hero boot. This is a size 8 because the Hero boot's more narrow. That's really interesting. So the Meermin Hero boot in a size 8 is just smaller than the Hawk boot in a size 7.5, just like all around a just smaller boot. It is shorter and it's more narrow, which is obviously why I went up to a size 8. And a little fun fact, I ordered these MTO from Meermin's, and I ordered the Hawk ones first in a 7.5 because I determined that was gonna be the best fit, and it fit me really well. And then when I went to order these MTO later on, I inadvertently chose a size 8 for these, and I'd already placed the order and I couldn't go back and change it. So I was like pissed off. I was like, damn, I ordered these too big in a size 8. And I got them and they were tight when I got them. I was like, oh my God, these are gonna be hard to break in because they were narrow. If I had gotten these in a size 7.5 like I intended to, I wouldn't have been able to wear them. They would have been way too small and my feet would have just died, or I would have had to sell them. It would have been terrible. So somehow I inadvertently lucked into ordering the right size from Meermin, which worked out. I am curious though. I'm going to also do a weight comparison for the Hawk one and see. So this is 1 pound, 6.4 ounces. So it is about 5.3 ounces lighter than the Negon boot. I'm gonna just do this one for fun since this is also Meermin. This is gonna be so light. 1 pound, 3.8 ounces. This is a very light boot. It's a cool boot. So this is actually side rant, not really a rant. It's completely related and not a side rant. This is the Meermin Chelsea boot in Snuff Kudu of one of the colors. I don't remember what it is. It's not caper green. This is caper green. It doesn't really look green to me. It just looks brown. So if you look at the comparison, obviously other than the color, the leather looks pretty similar. You know, as far as like grain and whatnot. Yeah, it feels like really similar. So this is naked Kudu and this is snuff waxy Kudu. And like, I think it's really the same. And this isn't a Meermin thing. This is like CF Stead where they advertise them separately, because I went on their website and they do advertise 2 separate leathers. But like, there's really no difference. If you're ordering these and you're like, I don't know, is the snuff waxy different than the naked? It's not really. I mean, it might be different as far as what they used to, you know, tan them with, but for your purposes of wearing them and feeling them and smelling them, it's the same. Is it? It's the same, yeah. I mean, there's really no difference, I don't think. It's just something to keep in mind. So I did just try these on to do a kind of feel and fit comparison of them. As far as fit, these fit very well. I think that this Viberg 2030 in 7.5 is the best fitting boot I've ever owned, and it's still the best fitting boot. Like, I don't think I'm ever gonna find a boot that fits me as well as this boot. It's just perfect. This boot, the Hawk in size 7.5, is a little more snug and fits more akin to this Viberg than this one does, the new Negon one. So these are in the same size, just different lasts. I think the toe box is good, vamp is good. For me, and this could change over time because luckily this is a leather heel counter, so it should mold to the shape of my foot. I think there's just a little too much, I'm gonna call it heel bump. I don't think it's a term, but I'm gonna make it a term. There's a little too much heel bump back here. Like, it sticks out a little too much, so my heel isn't completely cupped by it. There's a little space behind my heel, whereas this one, my heel is cupped pretty well by it. Let me see if I can, well, I don't know, in this one, I think this might have the same issue that my Grantstones did, where it's more of a Jurassic protrusion in the back, and then it dips in more prominently. Whereas the Viberg, it's a little bit higher and it's not as Jurassic, so like the bump isn't as aggressive and it tapers in more slowly, so it does a better job of cupping my entire heel than this one does. And if I got my Grantstone, I think it's probably the same thing, where it's just a little bit of heel slip in the heel. Hopefully over time that will change as, you know, I break it in more. The heel should conform to my foot and be more comfortable. I'll let you guys know over time how that works. But I would say that the fit 7.5 for this is right for me. If you buy Grantstones on, I guess, the Leolast, it fits pretty similar to Grantstone the Leolast in the heel. So if the Grantstone Leolast in the heel works for you, this one, I'm not going to say it will, but it should work for you. I'm not going to be responsible if you get this and it doesn't, but I think that the heel is very similar to the Grantstone Leolast. And then it's more roomy here than the Grantstone Leolast, which is good for me because I've mentioned before that the Leolast is a little bit too narrow and my feet stick out. So this is more roomy than the Leolast, but about the same in the back. So if the Grantstone Leolast fits you well, this one should theoretically fit you well too, with a little more room in the toe box. I will say though, the Meermin sizing now is a little different. They call this, I think, their extended sizing. So now instead of having like a men's and a women's sizing, it's like a universal or unified sizing where they go from size 2 to size 15. Obviously, like the size 2 is probably more going to be for women. The way it works, I believe, is that for men and this Negon Last in particular, you should size the same as your Meermin UK size or a full size down from your Brannock size, which is correct for me. My Brannock size is 8.5. I size down to 7.5 and it fits me. For women, they say you should size 3.5 sizes down from your US size. And then one full size down from your UK Meermin size. So men should size exactly according to your UK Meermin size. Women just size a full size down from that. So right now these are $275 on the Meermin website, and I think they are in stock and ready to ship, might be what they call it. I only mention that because a lot of times Meermin does MTOs on boots where you can get different types of leather. But right now these are not available in MTOs. They're only available in 4 leathers. This caper green, I think a light calf leather, a darker calf leather, and then something like oil polo crossboard, which is like just basically a dark hatch grain leather. A lot of times though, Meermin does MTOs of heritage shell cordovan, and I think they ran a shell cordovan model of these prior because my wife actually ordered the MTO shell cordovan boots. I would like to get a pair in that. I think that might be my next pair. I'm going to see how hers look and decide if I want to go that route. But right now, like I said, that's not available for ready to ship, and I don't even think you can get MTO right now. Those are the 4 options you have, those calf leathers and this one. I chose this one because I just really like Kudu leather. I think it's really cool how it has, let me see which one's a better example of this. So you can see like Kudu leather specifically, it's got this cool like scarring on it. I don't know if you can see those, I'll try to get pictures of it. It's just a lot more like natural to the animal, which is like an antelope in Africa, and you can see like scars from where it brushed up against bushes or thorns. And I think it just looks really cool and unique. You know, no pair of Kudu boots are going to look the same, and it's by no means uniform at all. It just looks really cool, and over time I think it'll age very well in patina. I mean, I know it will because I have a pair of Kudu boots, and I just like the way these are patinaed over time. You can see some of the scarring here on this boot. I would imagine, you know, these will follow a similar path of the scarring will just look really nice as you age these in and break them to the shape of your foot. So that's why I chose these. I think the calf leathers are probably a little more uniform and dressy. And I don't think I really own any boots in calf leather just because those are typically more for dressy shoes, and I like kind of full grain leather that has a lot of unique characteristics to it. So that's basically why I chose these. So I guess pros and cons of these boots overall. Pros, I'll start with first. I love the fact that they use a lot of natural materials for these. You know, leather heel counter here, it's pretty solid. Not as solid as something like a Viberg, but you know, it's $275. Leather, good. Insole is leather, midsole is leather, this toe puff is leather here. It has cork filler in the back. All of those are great natural components, and it does have this memory foam filler in the front half, which I guess is fine. I'd prefer leather completely, but that's just me personally. I like the fact that it's unstructured. I like to have my boots unstructured, and this is essentially unstructured. I love the fact that it's a gusseted tongue, or a bellows tongue as they refer to it as on their website. I think that's really nice. I like the fact that it's unlined and it has this really soft Kudu suede in it. That's just really nice. I think people should order these boots just for this. I know it's weird, but it's just so soft. It's like softer than any suede I've ever felt. I don't know if that's just Kudu or this specific thing, but it's really soft. Anyway, I love the fact that it's unlined. What don't I like about the boots? Well, it's got that little bit of memory foam filler, which is not my favorite thing. It is, you know, fit and finish things, as I mentioned before. Finishing touches, it's not perfect. You can see on the top here, maybe there's like a little more contrast where they didn't dye the top of the storm welt here. The back is, you know, I mentioned on these, it's not completely evenly cut. And those are smaller things. Overall, I think that they did a very good job of designing the boot and coming up with the components for it. One thing that Meermin's typically not really good with, that's a con, would be something like their customer service. They're known to have like really atrocious customer service. So make sure you get the size you want in the boots and you know what kind of boots you want, because trying to get those exchanged, I think, is probably pretty difficult to do. Luckily, I haven't had issues with that, like the MTO thing I mentioned before with my Chelsea boots. I got really lucky that I accidentally ordered the right size, because if I ordered the wrong size, I would have been screwed. So that's something to keep in mind. Like, I think the boots themselves, these boots, I think are much higher quality than Thursday boots for $75 more. I think they're close to on par with Grantstone, just not quite on the same level of finishing touches. So I think for the price, they're very good value. Their customer service just is not good. Like, Thursday's customer service is excellent. That's one thing I will give Thursday credit for. You want to return boots or do anything with boots, they will be more than happy to accommodate you and reach out to you and make sure that you have a good shopping experience. I can't say the same for Meermin. Their boots are great, their customer service is not. But I'll keep buying their boots because I like the boots even though their customer service is terrible. It's just one of those things, unfortunately. Anyway, I think that these are, as I mentioned, similar in quality to something like Grantstone. Finishing isn't as good, customer service isn't as good, but it's also, you know, cheaper by $75 plus. And you know, if you like Viberg boot aesthetic, I'll say this, right? If you really like the aesthetic of a Viberg boot, this looks just like a Viberg boot. Not just, but very similar. It's a very beautiful boot. And like the leather is, you know, pretty unique. Viberg doesn't really have a lot of Kudu options. So I would recommend this boot to you if you like boots, basically. If you're a boot person, I'd recommend it. As far as who I don't recommend this boot for, well, I guess $275 if you're completely against the idea of spending more than $200 and you refuse to do it. I would not recommend this boot. If fit and finish, like you want a boot that's like absolutely pristine and perfect with no flaws, I probably wouldn't recommend this boot. If you're not at all willing to deal with the potential poor customer service that Meermin has, I wouldn't recommend this boot. There's like a little bit of loose threads here. But overall, I think these are in stock and ready to ship. If you know your Meermin sizing, you know, hopefully my sizing guide helped. Similar to your hot class sizing is what I would go with for these. I think you should be fine, right? As far as confidence in your purchase, I think they're good. I would definitely recommend them to people that are just really like service boots. And, you know, if you like the components that I mentioned, give them a shot. So this has been my review of the Meermin Negon work boot on the Negon Last, just released this fall. I think it's a very nice boot. I would recommend it overall if you're willing to pay the money for it. So thank you guys, everyone. Thank you for watching. We'll have more boot reviews coming up, and I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks.